Why does the name Igbo still make many Nigerians uneasy? When people ask why the Igbo are disliked, resented, or reacted to such strong emotion, the answer is uncomfortable, but is not mysterious. It is not because the Igbo are uniquely good or uniquely bad. It is because history placed them at the center of unresolved national tension. To understand this, we must start before Nigeria existed. Strikingly, estimates suggest that tens of thousands of Igbo were killed during the 1966 massacre. Some estimates put the figure between roughly 8,000 and 30,000, and that the Nigerian Civil War resulted in the deaths of over 1 million people, most of them civilians. Under British colonial rule, different regions of what became Nigeria developed unevenly. In the east, many Igbo communities embraced Western education. Mission schools spread quickly. Literacy rates rose. Young Igbo men and women moved across the country in search of work as clerks, teachers, traders, railway workers, and civil servants. By the 1950s and early 1960s, the Igbo were visible everywhere, not dominant by force, but present by mobility. This visibility created admiration in some places and deep resentment in others. To many communities, especially in regions where colonial education spread more slowly, the Igbo came to be seen not as fellow Nigerians, but as competitors or intruders. This fear hardened into stereotype. After the independence in 1960, Nigeria inherited colonial borders, not colonial stability. Politics quickly became ethnicized because Igbo professionals were already spread across the country. They were overrepresented in federal services, commerce, and urban economies. That imbalance, real or perceived, fed a dangerous narrative that the Igbos were taking over. This narrative ignored context. It ignored colonial policy. It ignored structural inequality. But narratives do not need to be accurate to be powerful. In January 1966, a military coup shook Nigeria. Although the coup was not an Igbo coup intent, the ethnic identity of many of the plotters and the fact that most victims were northern leaders allowed fear to crystallize into hatred. In mid-1966, anti-Igbo pogrom erupted across northern Nigeria. Thousands of Igbo civilians were killed. Many were attacked by their names, accent, or appearance. Homes were burnt. Families fled south. This was not politics anymore. It was ethnic violence. One survivor later recalled market crowds chanting, "Garri will be cheaper," as neighbors fled. A small, humiliating phrase that in memory became a symbol of sudden, personal animosity. By 1967, the eastern region seceded as Biafra. The Nigerian Civil War that followed killed over 1 million people, most of them civilians. The Igbo lost not just the war, but their sense of safety within Nigerian projects. And yet, the end of the war did not bring true reconciliation. Post-war policies, such as the infamous flat compensation for lost savings, left many Igbo economically devastated. Infrastructures in the east were neglected. Ports, railways, and industries that once thrived were left to decay. Officially, there was no victor and no vanquished. In reality, there were deep unresolved grievances. Faced with exclusion and neglect, the Igbo turned to what they had always relied on: adaptability. They rebuilt through trade, apprenticeship, migration, and business networks. Markets, workshops, spare parts hubs, and transport lines became lifelines. This economic resilience saved lives, but it also reignited old resentments. To outsiders, Igbo success after hardship looked like dominance again. To the Igbo, it was survival. Two different interpretations of the same reality. Over time, resentment hardened into caricature. The Igbo were labeled greedy, aggressive, overambitious, disloyal. Popular culture reinforced these ideas. Politics exploited them. Social media accelerated them. By the 21st century, saying Igbo no longer triggered historical thought for many. It triggered emotion, and emotion rarely seek understanding. Despite their population and contribution, the Igbo have remained politically marginalized at the federal level. No Igbo president since independence. Weak representation in top military and security structures. Repeated exclusion from informal power arrangements. To some Nigerians, they have too much already. To many Igbo, we are never accepted. Both beliefs fed the cycle. The core truth: the Igbo are not hated because they are special. They are resented because they sit at the intersection of colonial destruction, civil war trauma, economic visibility, political exclusion, and unresolved national identity. Nigeria never healed the wound of 1960 to 1970. It simply covered it, and wounds that are not treated evenly reopen. History is not propaganda. Talking about Igbo history is not an attack to anyone else. It is an attempt to understand why one group became a mirror reflecting fear, envy, guilt, and unresolved trauma. Until Nigeria learns to discuss this history calmly, without denial or hostility, the resentment will continue, not because of the Igbo, but because the path is still unfinished.